We are now seeing what may be the most dramatic escalation in the response to the coronavirus pandemic in the United States. And I'll be completely honest, I am particularly worried. Trump is mulling a hard quarantine on New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Now it's personal. I live in New Jersey. We've already been under a shelter-in-place order. They've given us a nightly curfew. A couple people have already been arrested for having get-togethers. I'm more worried about the people in the government for the most part than I am the virus itself. But the virus itself is also scary. We are seeing some major developments today that are sending red flags for me, alarm bells. A lot of people say that with a large platform comes a certain responsibility. And I've actually had people say that I should, always be more optimistic and not talk about the seriousness of certain things, make people believe it'll be fine. Okay, well, to a certain degree, I get it. But I'm just going to tell you how I really feel. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything or pretend like it's all going to be, candy canes and rainbows. The media probably will. Many of them will just tell you things are going to be okay. It'd be fine. I'm not entirely convinced. I am not. China is now resealing up theaters. It's been months. They've been giving out thousands of urns. Now people in our media are questioning whether or not their numbers are legitimate. Surprise, surprise. We've all been questioning China for the longest time, thinking their numbers are not legit. But it's not just the hard quarantine that's freaking me out. It's stories like this. U.S. military command teams in charge of protecting Homeland Security are being isolated in the infamous Cheyenne Mountain bunker, where they will remain sealed off until the coronavirus pandemic passes. That's serious. The military, the government, they've made their decisions. But there's also other scary things that are happening. Notably, in other states, in other areas of the country, they are now tracking down. The Daily Mail says hunting down. I don't want to be over the top on this one. The Hamptons wants to ban coronavirus refugees from the Big Apple, and Rhode Island is sending the National Guard to find them as wealthy residents and celebs escape the virus epicenter. You see, the other day we saw checkpoints starting to emerge between our own states. This is unprecedented. I mean, when has there actually been a border checkpoint between a state? Hundreds of years ago? The Constitution basically allows that we can travel whatever state we want. And there are several court cases, Supreme Court rulings saying the states can't do this. They're starting to. Florida, for instance. If you're from New Jersey or you're a resident of New Jersey, which I am, you can't go there. Or if you do, you'll be quarantined. So they're being careful not to say you can't come because that would be unconstitutional, but they're enforcing a quarantine. And if you break it, 60 days in jail. We are seeing this in Florida. We are seeing this in Rhode Island. In Rhode Island, it's the most serious that I've seen. And Vox wrote this story. Vox is a left-wing progressive site. Governors are starting to close their borders. The implications are staggering. In fact, in this story, they say, despite what's going on, the union is still failing. It's their opinion that the union is failing. Let me start by reading you this story and walking you through what's going on. We're also hearing that the military is activating its civilian liaison federal authority or something, which is unprecedented. Apparently, it's never been done before. But I'll be honest, man, I've had real conversations with my friends about when is the right time to leave. We are not in an area that has been heavily impacted by the virus. For the most part, we've seen our store shelves be raided of toilet paper. Certain things like dairy and water were bought up very quickly, but they were restocked. And we're in the South. We're not in the North in the New York Metro. None of us are sick, and we don't know if we want to stick around to wait and see who does get sick. Maybe we should go home to our families, like where we're all really from. We're not from the South Jersey area. It's Philadelphia. Maybe we should drive 5 minutes across the bridge to our buddy's place, and we got to choose where we're going to stay. There was a story in Foreign Policy. It was a few weeks ago. They said the lockdown is coming, and your window of opportunity to choose where you will stay in the duration is slowly closing. For me here in South Jersey, it's closing fairly quickly, as already many states are saying we're going to quarantine anybody from New Jersey. Well, we're not in a hard place yet, so I have had real conversations about whether or not we stay or go. If I leave, I'm well equipped to go to my buddy's place not too far away and a more rural area. What I don't like about South Jersey is that, I don't want to be in a very densely populated area. This is what we're seeing now with people fleeing New York, for instance. It's not so much that people are panicking and saying, get out of the city, the end is nigh. It's everybody just saying, well, it's time to go visit their relatives or bunker down somewhere else. But it's causing problems because there are too many people doing it. And this is the real moral conundrum. Maybe it's better for everybody if I just stay here and we just stay in the house. We've got some supplies. There's I have no reason to believe things are going to get substantially worse necessarily. But then I saw, the army go into the bunker. And we also have this story from the New York Times. The stimulus will not save the economy from collapse. This is from March 22nd. And if that's the case, do you really want to be in a densely populated area? I honestly just don't know. But enough prattling. Let me get to the news and tell you exactly what's going on. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This stuff has me worried. Before we get started, as long as it matters, you can go to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There are several ways you can give. But the best thing you can do, share this video. This stuff is important. And I think now it's more important than ever that people know what's going on. Subscribe, hit the notification bell. I very likely will be continuing my work on YouTube as long as I can. I don't see any reason why I wouldn't be able to. But again, as things start to escalate, we can only wonder what comes next. And that's what has me, that is what has me worried. Trump mulls coronavirus quarantine on New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. The president on Saturday said he is considering imposing an enforceable quarantine on New York, parts of New Jersey, and parts of Connecticut as part of the efforts to curb the spread of coronavirus. Some people would like to see New York quarantined because it's a hotspot. New York, New Jersey, maybe one or two other places, certain parts of Connecticut quarantined, he said outside the White House. I'm thinking about that right now. We might not have to do it. There's a possibility that sometime today we'll do a quarantine. Short term, 2 weeks for New York, probably New Jersey, and certain parts of Connecticut. He even tweeted as much. I am giving consideration to a quarantine of developing hotspots, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. A decision will be made one way or another shortly. He said that if such a move happened, it would be primarily restriction on residents of those states traveling to other parts of the country. He later said that if enacted, it would not affect truckers or trade. He said that he had spoken to New York Governor Andrew Cuomo and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and said there was a problem with people from New York traveling down to Florida. We don't want that. This will be an enforceable quarantine, but hopefully we won't need it. The move would be a dramatic escalation of the efforts to stop the spread of the coronavirus and comes in the back of those states essentially shuttering daily life, closing schools, businesses, leisure activities, and urging residents to stay at home. Cuomo, who was holding a press conference at the same time as when Trump made his remarks to the press, expressed confusion at Trump's proposal, saying he had spoken to him about a hospital ship and opening up emergency medical sites, but not a statewide quarantine. I spoke to the president about the ship coming up and the 4 sites. I didn't speak to him about any quarantine, Cuomo said. I haven't had those conversations. I don't even know what that means. I don't know how that could be legally enforceable. And from a medical point of view, I don't know what you would be accomplishing. But I can tell you, I don't even like the sound of it. Not even understanding what it is, I don't like the sound of it. As Trump said this, I assure you, many people have already had conversations with their families about where the best place to be is. You see, some people are well off and they have summer homes or rural properties, or as Bernie Sanders liked to call it, a summer camp in Vermont, like many other Vermonters, but not everybody does. Many people have no choice but to just stay home, but some people might be considering going to their family and staying with their family in this time, coming together, not being by yourself in your house. These are real decisions. And that's basically what I'm talking about. Do I stay in the house I'm in, or do I go to my friends and family and do we, stick together? It's a serious challenge. Maybe it's not right for me to leave. I don't know. I've had many people ask me, when will you bug out? I have a van. It's fully functioning. It's fully capable of existing off the grid. But these are the legit questions that are being asked. And I just don't know. Trump has expressed the desire to reopen the country and get the U.S. back on a normal footing after weeks of measures to stop the virus, but has also noted that there are hot spots that have particularly large cases of the virus. He has placed travel restrictions on other countries, including China, Iran, and the European Union. The administration has also restricted non-essential travel and the land borders with Canada and Mexico, but this would be the first such travel restriction within the U.S. We've talked about domestic travel restrictions before. Here we are. Now, this story, to me, was substantially more alarming. I just want to remind all of you, as we read this story about the U.S. Army's Northern Command locking people down in a bunker, China is lying. In all likelihood, China is lying. I have no reason to believe they're telling the truth on these numbers, and it's probably way, way worse. China has been under a lockdown for months. We can only assume the same thing will happen to us. In fact, they're seeing people get reinfected. We don't know why it's happening, but people who are positive, recovered, testing negative, have once again tested positive, meaning this might come back. We might not have a strong immunity to it. You may be able to get reinfected. It could come in waves, in which case, when's the end of this? They say part of the U.S. Army's Northern Command in charge of Homeland Security is isolating at Cheyenne Mountain Bunker in Colorado as the coronavirus spreads across the country. The bunker is a command and control site, which was built inside the mountain of the same name, located near Colorado Springs. To ensure that we can defend the homeland despite this pandemic, our command and control watch teams here in the headquarters split into multiple shifts, and portions of our watch team began working from Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Station, creating a third team at an alternate location as well. Air Force General Terrence O'Shaughnessy, head of the U.S. Northern Command, and NORAD said during a Facebook Live town hall with those under his command. Our dedicated professionals of the NORAD and NORTHCOM Command and Control Watch have left their homes, said goodbye to their families, and are isolated from everyone to ensure that they can stand the watch each and every day to defend our homeland. It's certainly not optimal, but it's absolutely necessary and appropriate given the situation. Actions speak louder than words, man. China has said over and over again, everything's fine, and then they barricaded people in their homes. They just recently re-shuttered theaters. They tried to reopen things, it didn't work. You see over and over again the government saying everything's fine, and then things actually end up escalating. The scariest thing is that we're now seeing state borders close and people pretending like, no, it's not going to happen, and then it does happen. I don't know what to expect, but this is certainly scary stuff. The hunt for fleeing New Yorkers. The Hamptons wants to ban coronavirus refugees from the Big Apple, and Rhode Island is sending the National Guard to find them as wealthy residents and celebs escape virus epicenter. They have been placing the National Guard at train stations and bus stops to screen people, to see who is from New York and who isn't, and to force them into quarantine. They actually have some photos. You can see it. This is Rhode Island planning to send the National Guard to hunt down any New Yorkers who have fled to the state. Now, hunt down, pretty hyperbolic way of explaining this, but they're trying to track this because they don't want this virus to spread, and I can totally get it. I don't know if I want to stick around and stay in a place that is potentially going to become a hotspot. Where I am right now is not a hotspot. Again, I want to stress that. Vox says governors are starting to close their borders. The implications are staggering. The coronavirus pandemic is testing the very notion that the United States are united. In fact, they say in the story, the union is failing. Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed an executive order on Thursday that would require travelers from some coronavirus hotspots to self-quarantine. It provides that every person who flies into Texas from New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, or the city of New Orleans, or in any other state or city, as may be proclaimed hereafter, shall be subject to mandatory self-quarantine for a period of 14 days from the time of entry into Texas or the duration of the person's presence in Texas, whichever is shorter. Other states have imposed similar orders. Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis imposed an order on Tuesday that requires anyone flying from New York, New Jersey, or Connecticut to self-isolate for 14 days. Alaska and Hawaii also impose self-quarantine orders on people traveling from other states. These orders implicate one of the fundamental premises of the Union among the 50 states, the right of American citizens to travel freely among them. As the Supreme Court recognized more than 170 years ago, we are one people with one common country. We are all citizens of the United States, and as members of the same community, we must have the right to pass and repass through every part of it without interruption, as freely as in our own states. The right of all U.S. citizens to travel freely among the states, the court later explained, and U.S. v. Guest, 1966, was conceived from the beginning to be a necessary concomitant of the stronger union the Constitution created. But now here we are, with those borders being tested, and even Vox saying the union is failing. What's particularly noteworthy with the story from Vox is that they start to recognize the importance of borders, pointing out that initially the states wanted to take care of their own poor and not poor people from other states. I kid you not. They actually said that. That's surprising. The progressive site tends to support these progressive left-wing politicians who don't understand how that's basically what we as a country are trying to do. When we talk about border security, we're saying America first, right? That if you're an American, you will be treated, we will provide for you as a member of our community. And if someone crosses the border from another country, we can't do that because we got to take care of our own before anyone else. But there were national social safety nets enacted. And then it made less sense. Everybody was getting benefits from the federal government, so the states didn't have to really worry about it. That's what they point out. The fact that we are now seeing states take the first step in creating statewide border restrictions or checkpoints, to me, well, it's alarming because what comes next? And I will remind you that I said this before they implemented a curfew on New Jersey or a shelter-in-place order. I said you always have to ask yourself, when this happens, what comes next? And what do we expect? It's potentially here. I don't know if Trump's going to enforce a hard quarantine on me and the state of New Jersey. Maybe it'll only be the northern parts that are in the New York metro. That would make sense considering New York is the hotspot. However, if you really want to contain this thing, you're going to have to quarantine more than just these states. I mean, they may have to lock down the entirety of the states because the assumption is many people have already fled. If Donald Trump is saying this now, many people are going to start leaving. And New Jersey does have many people infected with COVID-19. So even as I say this to you now, we're questioning whether or not we should stay or go to our friend's place across, 5 minutes across the river. That's part of the problem. And that's the moral conundrum I've brought up. Maybe I should, for the good of everyone else, just stay where I am. We're hopefully safe, but we're hoping things don't get worse. Which brings me to the next point. I think they will. I don't think the stimulus is going to do anything to help us. I think we are, at this point now, we're going to be looking at the deployment of the National Guard and potentially martial law. Look, I am the last person to exaggerate on conspiracies or government control and lockdowns and all that stuff. But I feel as of right now, and I've been wrong in the past. I've been very wrong in the past. I've interpreted news wrong. I put a correction up even a couple of days ago for being wrong. Totally embarrassing to get things wrong. But hey, you know what? Nobody's perfect, right? Right now, I think we're in serious trouble because the supply chain has already been disrupted when China started pulling back exports from its country. We've already seen these things happen in the European Union with some countries, impounding certain supplies headed to other countries. You have to ask yourself what happens next. The stimulus bill will not save the economy from collapse. An opinion piece in the New York Times, that doesn't mean they're right. Although I agree with them, I think it is. I think it is right. How many people are going to be saved by this stimulus package? I honestly don't think that many. I think the money will be a relief, but prices are already going up. You're going to get 4 months of guaranteed wages from the federal government. Sounds to me like we're headed towards Great Depression, era stuff. The only problem is we have a much larger population, much denser urban areas. So I think we are looking at a potential for martial law. You know why? I'm not just pulling this out of thin air. Oh no, the military's going to come in. First of all, the National Guard's already been deployed. But martial law is different. Martial law is when the military, military law supersedes civilian law. It would be armed forces coming in, and they can't do this, for the most part, under the Posse Comitatus Act. But brings me to the next story from Newsweek. U.S. military activates its never-before-used federal response to combat the coronavirus pandemic. We are inches away from it. Check out this story. While being hit with coronavirus at rates equivalent to the civilian population, the U.S. military has activated its defense support of civilian authorities apparatus, establishing liaisons in all 50 states, activating units and command posts, and moving forces to provide medical, transportation, logistics, and communication support in New York and Washington states. Lieutenant General Laura Richardson, the command of Army North, has requested and received approval from the deployment of ground units in response to the now declared national emergency. The moves begin to implement 2 existing contingency plans, Con Plan 3400 for Homeland Defense and Con Plan 3500 for defense support of civil authorities, as well as numerous new orders specifically relating to coronavirus. 18 states have also moved to appoint dual status commanders, specially appointed National Guard officers who serve in both state and federal chains of command. The dual status commanders will report to General Richardson, as well as the governors of each state. The first and most important thing you all need to realize about all of this stuff: the people who are serving in the armed forces, who are on the ground providing support, and if there is some kind of martial law, the people who would be enforcing it are still Americans. They are still people we understand and relate with. They're people. We know many of them. I know people who serve in the armed forces. The assumption that they're mindless drones it's a negative view of these things. If this activation happens, it's because they're trying to make sure we all stay safe. I do not believe in a grand conspiracy to hurt, Americans. They're going to try and do their best. And the best thing we can do is be a part of a community and work together, because that's how we get through this. But I do point this out because we're already seeing the activation of the U.S. military for the defense support of civil authorities. People are concerned that there will be martial law in the sense that someone in the military will come in and enforce laws. They don't need to do that. Under posse comitatus, like I said, my understanding is they generally can't. What can happen, however, is that these people act as civilian liaisons, not really enforcing their laws, but you will see local law enforcement acting at their advisement, to say the least. You can call it whatever you want. Some people would say this is it. But I'm telling you right now that according to Newsweek, the U.S. military has implemented 2 plans, and they are coming out to aid civil authorities. I don't know what else you want to call it. There you go. But the few things that have really raised flags for me, the most notable would be U.S. military command teams going into an isolation bunker. So let's talk about what happens to the economy. Supply chain is disrupted. My store has food, so it seems like everything's fine. I mean, people raided the stores at first and, took all the toilet paper. I have no idea why. I guess they are really worried about not being able to wipe their butts or something. But the stores have restocked. Now my concern is, as people don't pay rent, then what happens? You see, the service and retail industries took a major hit when they shut down the economy. These people then lost their paychecks. Well, rent comes due on the 1st. That means the next wave of industries won't get their paychecks. And with the shuttering of retail services and the restaurant industry and local business, advertising is down and media companies are panicking. There is going to be a shockwave, and it could get bad. It could get much, much worse than we're seeing now. In fact, they keep telling us it's going to get worse. And now we're facing the potential for borders between our own states. Not only is it already happening, I shouldn't even say potential, it's literally happening. Hard enforced borders. They will stop you, they will screen you. But now we're hearing Trump say, you know what? Maybe we're going to lock these places down. By the time you watch this video, I may already be under a hard quarantine, and I don't know what that means. I don't know if it's going to be an overall good thing or a bad thing, but I assure you conversations are happening now, whether or not the right place, it's right to be in one of these places. People don't want to be in New York City. And I think if you're in New York City, man, I feel bad for you. That's the last place you want to be. You can't grow your own food there is a big issue, right? Concrete jungle. A lot of people maybe not having a lot of resources. How do you provide for everybody? And is it even possible for the U.S. government to go into a city as big as New York with supplies and distribute them effectively? Being locked in one of those tiny New York apartments would be like a prison sentence. Fortunately for me, my house is kind of nice. We got an area to skate in the back. But there are people telling me that we need to come together. It's better to be with a group of friends than to be by yourself. And so I've got a buddy just across the river who's saying, we all want to stay in my place. It's not, in New Jersey. I honestly don't know what to do, man. I've already gotten tons of people telling me to GTFO, that's for sure. And I certainly have a van capable of going anywhere. I don't know if many of you may know, I built this beautiful van with solar power and all this stuff. I'm glad I have it. I don't know what to do. Why don't you tell me what I should do? I'll leave it there. I will have more segments coming up at 6 p.m. at youtube.com/TimCastNews, my other channel. And I'll see you all then.